Gulsvig. Coach Gulsvig has been a spud for a very long time. Coach, we always have a saying, once a spud, always a spud. So currently, Coach Gulsvig is working for Sanford. And Coach Gulsvig spent 29 years teaching and coaching at Moorhead High School. 27 of those years as the head basketball coach, 27 years as an assistant football coach. Okay, I've known Coach, when I was in high school, I'm from Bismarck, North Dakota, but we used to always come to a holiday basketball tournament, and Moorhead High School was always in that basketball tournament. Okay, my senior year, we were state champs in North Dakota. We had 2 losses on our schedule. One of them was to Moorhead High School in the holiday basketball tournament. Coach Gulsvig is, come on in here, Coach.
All right.
Coach Gulsvig is a legend. Okay, and when we talk about our pillars of success, okay, and you've known the different speakers that we've had here and the different topics that we've talked about, and I think, okay, I played for Coach Miller in Bismarck, who was a pretty intense basketball coach, very much believed in defense and believed in toughness. Okay, Coach Gulsvig maybe took that to another level. And the reason why we chose Coach Gulsvig to come in and talk about toughness is what I believe Coach Gulsvig taught his teams, whether it was in football or basketball, about mental toughness and physical toughness. And those two things go hand in hand. So with that, I want you to give your utmost attention and turn it over to Coach Gulsvig.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. And but before I start, I want to say my little beard here's got less gray than those two guys, and they're a lot younger than me. So, don't you think? Well, it's an honor to address your squad. I gotta cover a couple bases here first. So, where's Shock? Okay, now the topic here is toughness. One of my first teams at Moorhead High, Shock was my running back. And he was tough. Now, I'm not blowing a lot of smoke up your rear end here. I'm telling you, the guy was tough. And as you go through your coaching years, you find out what guys are tough and what guys are not so tough. And as a coach, Coach Feeney and these guys here are constantly trying to bring that toughness out of you. Because essentially, if you have some talent, and you're competitive, the difference is the toughness level of yourself. And Rod Shock was a tough guy. So I'm old now, kind of decrepit. I'm not a football coach anymore, but I love football. And I love coaching football. And I really love basketball, and I think the difference, Coach, was I like basketball practice a little better. I liked football game day, though. Football game day was awesome. And I coached in the old school. I know you probably got about 40, 50 plays now. We had about 8. But we did those 8 pretty good. And I watched you play about 3 times. And I know that Otis, where's Otis? He's good. But I know this. Otis doesn't hike the ball. Where's the center? Starts with him. I wanted to know, first thing after the quarterback, I wanted to know who the center was going to be, and I wanted to know who the nose man was going to be. Because if we had a good nose man, which in '87 they did, we're going to win a lot of games. That nose man's going to create havoc on the other team. So we didn't want to have this pussyfooter playing nose man. We wanted a good, tough guy. And we wanted a center that would learn, because he had to play against that nose man all the time. And that center was going to get the ball back there. And Otis, I hope you thank your lineman when you rush for 200. Okay, attaboy. Because 200 is great, but your linemen are going to take you there. But the toughness level, I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned as a coach, because when you lose, you all lose together. And Coach Feeney, when he goes back at home after a loss, I mean, he takes it upon himself, and he goes to the mirror He looks in the mirror. That's what you do when you get beat. Because the person in the mirror is the first one you gotta check out. When we lost the game, that's what I did. How come I caused this? And I evaluated and I moved on. And that was how the toughness began. So I had tremendous victories at Moore High School. And I had tremendous defeats. I mean, defeats that just gut-wrenching. But I took from those defeats and got better. So I want you to think back to Alexandria last year. Section final, double overtime. And those of you guys that played in that last year, if you haven't drawn from that game, you're not very tough. You should be drawing from that game still and saying, I'm going to do better. And I'm sure there was one spot in that game where you could have done a little bit better. Maybe it was you need this much more for a first down. Now another toughness, I was trying to think things that would relate to you, is Elk River. And I'm going to tell you something about Elk River, because this is a lot about toughness. When I quit coaching here about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, they were ready to drop their football program. You know why? Couldn't behave, couldn't discipline themselves, a couple of bad hazing incidents, hadn't won games in 10 years. They're ready to drop it. What they do? They hired a guy like Feeney, a tough guy, from down south, from Georgia. They put the T formation in. My dad coached that. That's as old a football as you got. That's older than me. It's older than dirt. T formation. 6 plays. What did they do last year? Won a state tournament. What are they going to do this year? We'll meet the Spuds for the second time. And the first time didn't count. The second time counts. So if you're drawing from that right now, you're doing the right thing. That's toughness. Okay, so he told me I got 10 minutes, I could go for an hour. But I'm going to tell you something. And I thought about this story. We were playing our rival, and I coached sub-varsity. 10th grade, they called it sophomore football back then. But we always played Fargo South. And who was the best team on our schedule every year? Fargo South. So I always pointed to that game. That's the game we got to win. That's, for you guys, the Brainerd game. The Alexandria game. We only had really one of those a year. But one of my basketball players, and I loved him, was my quarterback. And I'll tell you what I found out about that night, you know what I found out about him? He wasn't very tough. We needed this much to win the game. Fourth and that much from midfield. We get the first down, game's over. Goes up to the line of scrimmage. Quarterback sneak. Gets this much. I never forgave him for it. I will never forgive him for it. Because that big a guy, nice quarterback, big fella, should get this much. I blame the center. I blame the 2 guards. I blame my quarterback. But who did I blame the most? The guy who looked in the mirror. Me. Because I didn't make it happen. But I learned from that. And 2 years later, that kid took me to the state tournament. We just about beat the number 1 team in the state. Because in 2 years, he also learned from that. He got tougher. He wasn't tough when he was a sophomore. But he got tougher. And that's the lessons that you learn. So we get a little saying in my house. My father was a football coach for 40 years. I don't want you to go down and tell your mom this story. But he also said, you gotta be tough to play football. You gotta be so tough and so mean, and you gotta be able to stomp on a baby chick if you had to. You know, a nice little baby chick, little chicken. Stomp on him. You gotta be willing to do that. And Friday night, you gotta be able to stomp on Brady. because they're gonna stomp on you if they get the chance. So good luck. Thank you. Let's do a little kicking and Brainerd.
Hey, hold on one sec, Coach. Hey, does anybody have any questions for Coach? Anything?
These guys wanna go home and get something.
No.